Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC, or Certified Life Coach Collective, an ICF-Accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Hello. Today I have got the top 5 coaching questions to ask your clients, the top 5 best coaching questions. These are questions that they were game changers for me when I was receiving coaching. They've always been really great questions when working with clients. So let's get into the top 5 best coaching questions to ask. And of course, if you want to jot these down and you're like, actually, I would like to ask myself these questions, you can get into a little bit of self-coaching in today's podcast episode. So let's start with the first one, powerful question, one that should be the backbone of shaping every client session you ever hold. And it is, what do you want and why? And there's a lot of ways to ask this question. So the way that I'm framing each of these questions, of course, you might find that when you work with clients, you want to word it in a slightly different way. It is always important to consider, how does my client think about this? What's the jargon or terms that they're most comfortable with? So, shape these questions in any way you want. But number one, the guiding question, what do you want and why? Sometimes you might start out a coaching session by asking, what would you like to have shift between now and an hour from now? As a way to get to this, what do you want and why? Just make sure that as they tell you what they want to shift, the client, that you're also asking why they want to shift it. And that's important because you don't just want to come from a strategic place of okay, so what you'd like to do is make a decision, yes or no. Cool. Well, by the end of the session, make your decision. What happens if you come from too strategic of a place is those people who know how to execute are going to look at you and go, got it. I've made my decision. I still feel overwhelmed, stressed, frustrated. And that is a common newbie coach thing to get into, where you can be too strategic and not look enough at the client's way of being. And then the client ends up going, okay, I know how to do stuff, but it's actually the way of being that I am trying to shift. So what do you want and why? It's really, really common for clients when you ask them what they want or what they want to do with the day's session to go into a lot of what I call verbal processing. And there are some coaching frameworks that would say, if a client is talking a lot and they're kind of going into some stories and all of that, you just need to cut them off and get them focused. I think there's a certain line that you have to be perceptive about noticing in a coaching session with that, because sometimes clients verbally process, by which I mean they find their way to what it is that they actually want by talking about it out loud. So in other words, just because a client is telling a long story or saying, well, here's what I want, and this is kind of what was going on during my week since our last session, and this is the context, and I want to tell you all the context. Sometimes they are telling you that so that they can actually figure it out along the way. I also think that there's a lot of benefit to when clients go down that route for me as a coach. Because if you've been coaching for any amount of time, you have to have had the experience of a client starting a session saying, I'm very focused, I know what I want, here's what I want today. And you coach them around that. And 45 minutes into the hour-long session, you suddenly realize, oh, wait a second. They said they wanted this at the top of the hour, but everything that we've been talking about since actually points to this other thing that this person actually wants or needs, Or maybe they don't even realize that everything they're saying keeps pointing back to this other thing that they want or need. I invite my clients in my private coaching to give me information about what is happening for them. I keep an eye on the timer. If they're going into maybe more than 5-10 minutes of backstory or context, or here's what was going on for me, that's when I might kind of say, I don't want to lose the thread here. I want to make sure that I know what it is that you're wanting to get from today's session. So can I just, pop that question in and we can revisit some of the context in a moment. I want to make sure that I know what it is you want and then give me the context so that then I can understand how the context fits with what it is you want. But nonetheless, I encourage you to go ahead and see what that line looks like for you and how effective it is in your sessions to allow clients to have some time to verbally process. You might find that a richer conversation develops around what the client wants and why. So first question, powerful coaching, what do you want and why? Second question, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? A lot of times people get stuck in thinking about what they want to do or a situation in their life that they want or wish would change. But there's this other question that's amid all of this, which is who do you want to be? And you can amend this question to be contextual for what the client's going through. I'll give an example of, let's say you have a client who is a step parent. So, there's an ex in the picture who has kids, and your client is now married to someone who, still needs to have interactions with that ex. And let's say that the ex, according to your client, who is a step parent, feels like, hey, that ex is terrible. She's awful to deal with. I can't stand her. All that good stuff. Well, who do you want to be in your relationship to your stepkids? Who do you want to be in your relationship to your partner? And who do you want to be in relationship to this very difficult to deal with ex that used to be married to your current partner? These are all really valuable questions to explore. Instead, it stops becoming about what do you want to do, and it starts becoming about who do you want to be, and it puts you in a different frame of mind. I think this is also really helpful in business. So for instance, in marketing, a lot of times coaches can get really caught up in all these things that I need to do around marketing. And when I'm working with a coach and offering business coaching, one of the questions I like to ask is, when it comes to how you show up on social media, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be yourself? Who do you want to be for your followers? Who do you want to be when it comes to your messaging? This was a really profoundly helpful question that I asked myself when I was first starting in marketing, marketing my business, because when I asked myself who I wanted to be on social media, it came to me that who I wanted to be was that person who maybe popped a little one-liner or a pivotal question for my followers or audience or community that would have them go, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. Or that might have them go, wow, I was really feeling kind of crappy about XYZ, but that question is kind of getting me to consider things differently. So that's who I want to be on social media. It's what I aim to be when I create my content. So this question, second powerful question to ask, who do you want to be, is a really pivotal question that can change a lot of the trajectory of a very action-oriented strategic session. It can also be one that gets someone to consider multiple dimensions of the ways that they show up. All right, third question that is a really powerful coaching question. If I don't know wasn't an answer, what would your answer be? If I don't know wasn't an answer, what would your answer be? Now, this is one that my coach, my own personal coach, would ask me. And when he first started asking me this question, I found it really annoying. I was just like, what do you mean? I just said, I don't know. So this question is a follow-up to when a client says, I don't know. You ask them, what would you like to have happen in this situation? And the client says, I don't know. You follow up with, and if I don't know wasn't an answer, what would your answer be? And when my coach would do this with me, I would feel so annoyed with him. But I also see the genius behind it, because the genius behind it is this relentless commitment on the part of the coach to a belief that the client has all the answers they need already. The client doesn't need the world to change. The client doesn't need the world to be easier. The client doesn't need their job to change. The client doesn't need their relatives to change. The client knows what it is that they want out of the situation. So I don't know is not really an answer. And the next time that you are in some kind of a challenge in your personal life where you feel like, I just don't know what I want, try asking yourself, all right, if I don't know wasn't an answer, what would my answer be? And you will see that it is a profound, profound question. All right. Fourth question that is a really powerful, these are my top 5 most powerful coaching questions. This one we borrow from Jerry Colonna, who wrote the book Reboot. It is an amazing book. It's so good. Jerry Colonna, Collonna, Reboot. And the question is, how are you complicit in creating the conditions that you say you don't want? How are you complicit in creating the conditions that you say you don't want? Oh, talk about personal responsibility. The reality is, and this is, I think, the orientation of coaching, that we all have choices in life. We might be operating within unfair systems. We might not like the choices that we are operating within. We might feel that the choices themselves are really unfair. And they very well might be. I'm not going to dispute that. But nonetheless, even in a situation where we don't like the circumstances, there's always some level of choice. And often if we do a debrief on how we got there, we find that there's some way, even if it's the tiniest little thread, where we are complicit in creating the situations that we say we don't want. I can give examples for days. The job that has terrible management. Well, how are you complicit in creating the conditions you say you don't want? Well, staying at the job. The relative or mother-in-law or sibling that you don't get along with. How are you complicit in creating the conditions you say you don't want? Well, is there any part of you that is hesitating to have the awkward discussion? Any part of you that's hesitating to actually give a boundary in that situation? How are you complicit in creating the conditions that you say you don't want? Powerful question, and one that I have started to use whenever I am totally frustrated with a situation and I think that I have already tried all the things to try to remedy it. Then I go, okay, how am I complicit in creating the conditions that I say I don't want? And I can always find something where I'm making a choice or avoiding taking an action, or the energy I'm carrying isn't fully in integrity, something that I can shift. All right, so I'm going to review the 4 questions I've asked so far before I get to my very, very, very most favorite coaching question of them all. So 4 questions. What do you want and why? Who do you want to be? In response to a client saying, I don't know, answering with the question, and if I don't know were not an answer, what would your answer be? The Jerry Colonna question, how are you complicit in creating the situations that you say you don't want? So those are the first 4. And now the fifth question. Drum roll, please. I don't actually have a drum roll sound effect. I would be so much fancier if I did. But this is my most favorite coaching question of all time. I think it's so powerful. If you could have it any way that you want it, how would you want it? And wowza, when clients answer this question, it's usually one of two responses. It is either, well, I would want this, and I would want this, and I would want this, and it gets very expansive very quickly, or it's this kind of upset, angry, annoyed, well, I would want it this way, but here are the 10 things that are wrong. And there's an opportunity that is inherent in both of these situations. I do not believe that you should label the latter response, oh, well, look, you're just uncoachable, you're pessimistic, you aren't willing enough, you're listing all the things that are wrong. No. I have a lot of empathy for what it feels like when someone goes, well, I would wish for this, but here's the 5 reasons why that'll never happen. That person feels stuck. That person is struggling. I have been there before. And if any coach I'd ever worked with had just left me on the ground with, well, guess you're not coachable, bye, where would my life be? So if you could have it any way you want it, if it goes in the expansive direction, then it's all right. Great. We have just unlocked a new doorway to 10 different options that you had never considered before. Kudos to you. Which one do you want to take action on? If they go in the route of, it would be nice, but here are the 5 things that are in my way, you can coach in a lot of different ways. You could coach around, how is that serving you? How is this serving you? To focus on the things that might not work out. You can't predict the future, all of that. You can go in that route. You could also coach this person around, who would you get to be if you surmounted all of those challenges? This is a way that a coach can paint a vision of a compelling future for their client. Get them curious about who they might be on the other side of those 5 very real things that are in their way. Alongside some of these conversations, and this is, I think, to me, like one of the pillars of dealing with client resistance, is letting clients know when you feel resistant, when I am coaching you in such a way that some of the old limiting beliefs that you have held very, very dear for a long time might start to crumble, and particularly if there's anything that's tied to an identity that you don't want to give up, you are going to feel like I am the enemy. You are going to feel like I'm not supporting you. Because that is sometimes how the resistance shows up. I am supporting you when I question your limiting beliefs. I am supporting you when I invite you to go beyond the identity that you have always known. But it might not feel like that at the beginning. I actually have a post on my website, Your Courageous Life, and it is one in which I talk about how a good coach, counselor, or therapist will piss you off just a bit. And I tell a story in that post about how I was leaving a meeting where a workshop of narrative therapists. So it was all about narrative therapy. And I had shared a story in that particular workshop where my own coach had really questioned in a very direct way some of the narratives that I had. And I had not been doing a boohoo. I'd been doing this very boohoo, poor me, da-da-da. And my coach was saying things to me like, well, if you say so. And just letting the silence hang in the air. And this was a strategic technique to get me to actually look at myself, look at the fact that I was advocating for my own limitations. I was the one arguing for my own limitations, and it was poor me, and I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. And my coach was actually really supporting me, and I had shared that as a powerful experience, and I had been very clear that my coach had supported me. And another therapist in the group came up to me and said, oh, it must have been so terrible for you, this person being so unsupportive. And it was like, my coach wasn't being unsupportive. And so that's why I say that there's this idea in coaching that you're just going to get like support and a pat on the back and cheerleading and all of that. And so your clients might be coming to the coaching environment with you with that expectation. They might be coming with the expectation that coaching is just totally going to be a you can do it environment. You've got all the skills, you're good, you can do it, there's nothing you need to look at. But then there are these other questions, right? There's client resistance. Well, I don't know. Well, if I don't know wasn't an answer, what would your answer be? Or how are you complicit in creating the conditions that you say you don't want? Clients might not be prepared for the fact that their coach is going to challenge them to step into a new vision of themselves. So that is why I'm letting you know that it might be something that you also want to add to how you set up these questions, to level set expectations for your client, to let your client know, hey, here's the thing. As part of our work together, there are going to be times when you might be resistant to change. I don't know what it looks like for you, but if you do feel resistant to change, it's a really common thing to feel like the one who's poking at you a bit to support you around change is the bad guy or the one who's doing something wrong. And I want to let you know and be very clear that I'm supporting you. I'm only ever going to go in the direction you want me to. If you tell me, no, I do not want to explore in this area, I will let you know, hey, you're telling me very clearly you don't want to explore in this area. That's fine, and I can let it go. And I want to let you know that we have hit a place where there's a block over there, and maybe we'll pick it up later. But, like at some point, this is going to have to be looked at. So however you would have that honest and transparent conversation with your client is what I'm inviting you into here. Essentially, as a coach, you want to let your clients know, I'm holding up a mirror. And you are the one looking in that mirror. And I'm also sharing what I see in that mirror. You're in the driver's seat, but I don't want to subvert your growth by being afraid to hold up the mirror for fear that you'll get upset with me. So those are the top 5 most powerful coaching questions. I love these questions so much. They're ones that I would say on some level I work with in every coaching capacity, every client. They are, what do you want and why? Who do you want to be? And if I don't know weren't an answer, what would your answer be? How are you complicit in creating the conditions that you say you don't want? And last but never least, my very favorite coaching question, if you could have it any way that you want it, how would you want it? All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.